Squid Game Season 3 brought us some of the wildest character arcs and betrayals the show has ever seen, making some of the most intense and infuriating moments. In this video, we're breaking down the most hated players of the season, starting from the ones we disliked all the way to the ones who were straight up unforgivable. Player 336. We're kicking off this list with a character who didn't scream, kill, or take charge, but still managed to infuriate viewers through his cowardice. Player 336 wasn't a leader or a monster. He was worse in some ways, a passive, spineless follower who let others do the thinking and the hurting for him. His most unforgettable moment came in the final game. The majority decided they were going to get rid of Gi-hun and the baby. And who did they choose to carry out the betrayal? Player 336. Not only did he go along with it, he actually played a key role in setting the trap. He helped tie the suits together to make the fake safety rope, approached Gi-hun like a friend, and acted concerned, as if he were trying to help. But it was all a lie, a setup to lure Gi-hun into a fatal, false sense of security. Player 336 didn't kill out of panic. He didn't fight to survive. He just followed orders because it was easy. He chose to betray someone who trusted him, not because he had to, but because he lacked the backbone to say no. While player 336 showed his lack of guts by following the mob, our next player's cowardice led to an unforgettable tragedy. Player 353. Some villains stand out for their clever plotting. Others leave a mark for their raw, shameless love of cruelty. Player 353 definitely fits into the second group. As one of the dominant players during the final stretch of the game, he wasn't satisfied just tagging along. He needed to be seen. He needed to hurt. When the mob turned on Gi-hun and the baby during the Squid game, 353 was the first to turn words into violence. He stepped forward, seized the heavy metal pole, and instantly positioned himself as the group's main muscle. No hesitation, no remorse. He didn't try to reason or negotiate. He made one cold demand: hang the baby from the pole, or he'd shove both of them off the edge. That moment told us everything about him. He was someone ready to be the weapon, willing to threaten an infant without flinching. Though Gi-hun didn't cave, and 353 hesitated when challenged, the damage was done. He later rejoined the chaos, swinging the pole at Myung-gi before getting kicked to his death. He wasn't a mastermind, just a violent tool for the mob, but a deadly one. His cruelty was calculated, and it made him unforgettable. Player 353's aggression was calculated and coordinated with a group, but the next player brought a wave of violence that was wild, reckless, and completely out of control. Player 096. While some contestants in the Squid Game killed to survive or gain an edge, player 096 was different. He didn't kill for strategy. He killed because he enjoyed it. A walking storm of chaos, he brought pure, uncontrollable madness to the fifth game, jump rope. After making it safely across the deadly glass bridge, he didn't wait patiently like the others. No, he decided to claim the bridge as his own personal killing ground. Cackling like a lunatic, he turned on the remaining players still trying to survive, shoving one poor contestant off the edge without a second thought. When Gi-hun tried to stop him, the two clashed in a desperate fight. It was a short but brutal encounter. In the end, Gi-hun managed to overpower him and send him crashing into the abyss, but the damage had already been done. What made player 096 so terrifying wasn't his strength or strategy, but his complete detachment from morality. He didn't care about winning. He only cared about the power to end lives. And for that brief moment, he was a nightmare made real. He didn't just play the game, he hijacked it, and it made him one of the most hated players of the season. Player 096 might have been a monster to strangers, but the next contestant on our list destroyed the lives of the very people he pretended to care about. Player 388. Dae-ho. Few things are more frustrating than someone who hides behind lies and blames others when things fall apart. That perfectly sums up player 388, a man who posed as a hardened ex-Marine but turned out to be nothing more than a coward in disguise. He walked into the game flaunting a fake tattoo and talking tough, claiming he was ready for anything. But the truth? He had never even held a real weapon. When the rebellion failed, Dae-ho's true self was exposed. He froze up in fear, and his lack of action led directly to the death of Gi-hun's closest friend. That single moment sparked something dark in Gi-hun. From that point on, Dae-ho was a man on the run, paranoid and desperate. When Gi-hun finally caught up with him during the hide-and-seek game, Dae-ho didn't show remorse or humility. Instead, he screamed, deflected blame, and painted himself as the victim. He wore a mask of strength, but beneath it was nothing but weakness, fear, and finger-pointing. Viewers didn't just dislike him, they were disgusted by him. Dae-ho tried to act like a soldier, but in the end, he was just playing dress-up. But the next player hid behind a mask of spirituality to cover up her selfish and toxic true self. Player 44, the shaman. From the moment she entered the game, Player 44 was one of the most insufferable characters to endure. Constantly muttering about fate, karma, and divine guidance, she tried to present herself as some enlightened spiritual guide. But underneath all that mystical talk was a selfish coward using a fake persona to hide her true nature. She formed a little cult of followers who believed in her supposed psychic powers, promising them protection and wisdom in return for blind loyalty. But during the hide-and-seek game, her so-called divine vision led her entire group straight into a trap, a room already occupied by two of the game's most lethal killers. As her followers were brutally slaughtered, Player 44 didn't stop to warn or defend them. She simply bolted, abandoning them to save herself. And that wasn't her only betrayal. Later, when trying to escape Ji-hun, she threw the wounded Dae-ho under the bus, offering him up just to protect her own life. Her hypocrisy, fake spirituality, and complete disregard for others made her screen time absolutely maddening. She wasn't wise. She wasn't brave. She was a fraud who used faith as a shield and tossed others aside when things got tough. But while the shaman sold others out to save herself, our next pick was a straight-up bully who took pleasure in picking on anyone weaker than him. Player 124. Nam-gyu. Nam-gyu was the perfect example of someone who couldn't survive on his own, a parasite clinging to someone stronger to give himself meaning. He attached himself to Thanos, the wild, drug-fueled chaos agent from the previous season, and quickly became known as Thanos' shadow. He mimicked everything, his words, his movements, even his drug use, but lacked any of the unhinged charisma that made Thanos so bizarrely memorable. Where Thanos had unpredictability, Nam-gyu had only venom. He used his position as Thanos' second-in-command to bully weaker players, especially Min-soo, whom he cruelly tormented about the death of someone he loved. Alongside Player 333, he hunted others during the hide-and-seek game, showing a disturbing enthusiasm for violence. But underneath that tough guy act was a hollow shell. When he lost his necklace, the one containing his precious drugs, he unraveled completely. The confidence, the threats, the swagger, gone. All that remained was a trembling, frantic mess. Nam-gyu wasn't dangerous because of strength or conviction. He was just a copy of a stronger villain, a cheap knockoff who relied on someone else's image to survive. His downfall wasn't surprising. It was inevitable, and it made him one of the most pathetic figures in the entire game. But our next player's violence was raw, mindless, and straight to the point. Player 100. If any player perfectly embodied cold, calculated selfishness, it was Player 100. He wasn't the loudest or the strongest, but he was the one constantly pulling strings from the shadows, all to serve himself. While others struggled with morality and survival, Player 100 was the first to shout for another round. No matter how many people had just died, he was the engine that kept the games moving, not out of courage, but out of greed. His cowardice was just as striking as his manipulation. He relied on the safety of crowds, whispering in ears and pushing others to act while he stayed hidden in the middle. One of his most ruthless moments came during hide-and-seek. Trapped with the delusional shaman, he used her key to unlock their escape. Then, without even flinching, he shoved her straight into a killer's path and slammed the door behind him, listening as the woman who just saved him was murdered. After that, he became the mastermind of every major mob decision. He rallied players to kill the baby, led the charge against Gi-hun, and stirred up violence from behind the safety of others. Player 100 was no brute. He was a schemer, a manipulator, and one of the most hated players in the entire game. But our top spot belongs to a player whose descent into darkness was far more chilling, deeply personal, haunting, and tragically inevitable. Player 333. Lee Myung-ji. No other player in Squid Game history took such a shocking and disturbing moral dive as Lee Myung-ji. At first, he was seen as someone to root for, a desperate father to be trying to protect player 222 and their unborn child. He even offered to take her place in a deadly challenge, vowing to keep her safe no matter the cost. But that noble instinct soon twisted into something much darker. Teaming up with the drug-addled Namgyu, Myung-gi spiraled into violence. He became a cold-blooded killer, participating in gruesome acts with little remorse. In a gut-wrenching mistake, he even murdered player 120, someone who had devotedly protected his child. That moment marked the beginning of his unraveling. Haunted by loss and guilt, he eventually joined the mob, pushing weaker players to their deaths in hopes of increasing his own chances. He killed Masu, then, out of nowhere, switched sides, joining Gi-hun to protect the baby, revealing he was the father all along. But any shot at redemption was shattered in the final game, when he dangled his own daughter off the edge, threatening to kill her to win. That one act, willing to sacrifice his own child, sealed his place as the most loathed player in the series. So, those were our picks for the most hated players in the final season of Squid Game. Do you agree with the list? Or is there someone you think we left out? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're hungry for more Squid Game theories and breakdowns, go ahead and click the video on your screen right now.